They have now got their so Andrew, welcome. Thank you for that. Thank you for your patience.
You're welcome. It's great to be here, Steve. Thank you for having me back.
Brilliant. Um, Tell everybody about yourself who hasn't seen you before the first time.
Okay. Well, I'm Andrew Marsh. I'm 57. I live in Glasgow. Um, I was a geologist for 23 years in the construction industry, based in Glasgow, and then I worked in elsewhere in the country, the north of England, Wales, the Midlands, host of places, and I spent a year overseas. And by and large, I worked quite successfully. I think I did quite well at what I did, but I've always felt as though I didn't quite fit in anywhere, whether that was at home with family, friends, or at work in a work situation. And I particularly didn't fit in when I was at college. So it didn't come as a big surprise to me when at 51, which was 6 years ago, I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. And it kind of put everything into context. It made a life of not fitting in, being bullied and abused, because some of it was way more than bullying, considerably worse than bullying. And so not knowing that why was the big question until I say I got the diagnosis, and it's put everything into context. And the word I use for it is understanding. That's the big word that comes to me from it. Is I understand who I am and what I have, this condition I have called Asperger's syndrome. And with that comes certain traits and idiosyncrasies and characteristics, which sometimes are a struggle being around other people and communicating and understanding and being understood. And other times they're fantastic skills and abilities that people have. And I think I've got one of them at least, and that's creativity. And about 20 or 25 years ago, I started writing, and that really came as a result of being in a design office with lots of people, going out on construction sites to fix problems or inspect works, things like that. And as things happen on construction sites, you will meet some amazingly fantastic people, from the inspectors and the man digging the hole in the ground to the resident engineer and the client wanting to know, are we on time? Are we on budget? And, is this going to cost us any more money? And things like that. And so listening to these people that I met on site, they would tell some interesting and funny and sometimes quite crude and rude stories. And I would think that's really interesting. That's funny. And so I did what most writers do, and I kept a notebook and pencil with me, and I would surreptitiously write down these things that people were telling me, and I just compiled notebooks of interesting things. And one day I got to the point of thinking about a certain thing. What could be a dramatic beginning to a book? And this idea came to me, and I thought, that's great. So I sat with that. I let it fester. I let it mature and germinate. And when I was working overseas in Brunei in 1996, one day I just thought, you know, I'm going to start writing this book and see how I go along with it. And I was very fortunate, and I know that there's a lot of writers out there that struggle with the daily grind of knocking 1,500 words or 1,000 words or whatever they want to achieve. I'm quite lucky in that when I sit down, focus on my writing, that's what I do. I consider my writing a job. And just as with a job, you can't suddenly stop your work at 10 o'clock in the morning and think, oh, there's something nice on the TV I want to watch. You can't do that when you're at work. And I had the mindset that I'm writing, I'm going to put a shift in at my writing. And so I would either do a half shift at half a day or a full day of writing, completely focused on that. And that's one of the things I found out from my Asperger's, is one of my traits, is my absolute railway line focus, to be on the thing that I'm doing and not get distracted by the peripheral stuff that's going on around. Your phone's bleeped and there's a text or there's a Facebook message or whatever it is. So I know I'm lucky, and there are people out there who write that aren't as lucky in being able to write as frequently and as much each day. But I quickly produced this first draft, and I did all my editing and things, and my first book was published. And it was quite interesting because I tried the usual route of trying to get publishers and agents, and I have got probably over 100 rejections from publishers and agents for my first book. And I couldn't wait any longer. I had an idea for my second book, and I'd already started writing my second book. So I thought, nope, I'm going to do it. And fortunately, I went on The Weakest Link, a quiz show back in the
Yeah, yeah,
90s and
yeah.
2000s, and I won. I won 2,230 quid, which was fantastic because that actually meant I could go to a proper book printers, and say, how much for 2,000 copies of this book? They gave me a price, incredibly fantastic. And they said, yeah, well, that's no problem. We can do that. We just need three files from you. We need a cover file, we need the front end file, and we need the text of the book. No problem at all. Sorted all that out. And lo and behold, my first book was published in about 2003. And I got the bug. That gave me the bug for writing. And so I've written several more books since then, and I've changed from, they were kind of crime thrillers and adventure stories, and I now write young adult fantasy. I had this idea for a 14-year-old boy who was unloved at home and bullied at school, which may have resonated a bit with my own childhood, and thought, let's put him in an interesting situation and let's see what he does with it, how he gets out of it, how he manages it, and how that can be interesting to readers. And so that's how Jack Jansen and the Stormcaller was born. And I self-published him 2 years ago now, and he's the beginning of a series. And so the series is going to be 8 books, and I'm working on the follow-up to that. And I get so much pleasure in being able to sit down and write. And I say, put in a shift of work, and at the moment, I'm doing between 2,000 and 4,000 words a day, which is fantastic. I'm grateful that I have the discipline and the time to be able to do that. Um, and and I really love it. And so, hopefully next year, Jack Sanson and the Pirates of Nathia will be the second book that'll be published next year. And I'm just going to keep working away at that and other ideas for books. I'm never short of ideas. I've got dozens of ideas, and I've got loads of little files in my computer, because if I get an idea, if I write it down straight away, then I will come to my computer and I will sit down and I will start writing just the idea. I don't worry about punctuation. I don't worry about grammar. Sometimes it's lists, sometimes it's one or two sentences, but I find that if I write one or two sentences, that'll become a paragraph. And then suddenly that paragraph becomes a page. And that page becomes 3 or 4 pages. And you've got notes, ideas, thoughts, some ideas of structure and character and who the characters are. What's the theme of the story? Do I have an ending for it? Do I know how it's going to end? Because sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. And so I just develop this and I write these. So I have loads of little notes and ideas files. That's what I call them for other books that I will be writing in the future. And I thoroughly enjoy it, and I love it, and it's I get so much satisfaction from it. And it's sort of it's part of my identity, I think, with the Asperger's, and I have embraced my diagnosis, and I've talked to quite a lot of people, and I'm on various social media groups on Facebook and elsewhere, and I get quite sad sometimes when I see people on the spectrum and they're struggling, and the struggles they have are with people. I struggle with people because people are fickle. They don't necessarily know they're doing it, but they don't always mean what they say, and they don't always say what they mean. And people on the spectrum, people with Asperger's and autism, we're very literal. We will take someone very literally. And so when you go and do that thing that someone has asked you to do, and you said, right, you said this, I'll go and do that. And you give it back to them and think, well, what did you do that for? I said, but that's what you said. Oh, but that's not what I meant. Well, how am I supposed to know that? You've given me an instruction, you've told me what you wanted to do, and I've gone away and done it. And you then said, that's not what you wanted. Well, let's stop doing that. Let's sit down and talk about what it is you want to do. And it's one of the things that I'm doing. I'm working up courses and techniques and strategies to present to employers when I work with employers about how to get the best from people with Asperger's, because they have amazing skills and talents that they're not being recognized for. Just to put that in context, 16% of people who have autism or Asperger's have full-time employment. And there's another 16% who have some kind of employment in some capacity, part-time, voluntary work, or whatever. So that's 32% of people on the spectrum who have some kind of work. The national average for disabled or not for disabled people is 48%. So we're another 16% shy of even making up the minimum that the other disabled community have.
Right.
And I think that's a terrible indictment on us as a society, and employers, and the employability, or the wanting to engage with people who have Asperger's. They see programs like the Big Bang Theory, and they think, oh, Asperger's. Maybe that Sheldon Cooper fella's got Asperger's. Or they think of Rain Man, the film with Dustin Hoffman and Tom Cruise,
Yeah.
and they see these very specific, very developed, very idiosyncratic patterns of behavior and characteristics. They see Rain Man who had the twitch, and he would repeat himself, and he'd repeat himself, and he'd repeat himself, and he'd have the twitch, and he would do this, and he would say it, and he would say. That's his way of communicating and trying to make sense of what's going on in his head. Because if his head is like my head is going at 1,000,000 miles an hour all the time. I can't slow it down. I can't stop my head from being on the go all the time with 1,000,000 different things. So when people see the Sheldon Coopers and they see Rain Man, they immediately think, well, he's not very good socially, and he doesn't interact well with people. And I don't really think we should go out of our way to try and employ these people. Whereas what they should be looking at is, what specific skill and ability does this person have? And you will be amazed if you actually take the time to find out that some of the people that you are employing have abilities way beyond what they're currently being utilized for, and they have skills that could be fantastic for your company, for developing new products, a new process, a new way of looking at something, a new way of putting together what you do, or coming up with a great new idea.
Yeah. Andrew, do you think we who have disabilities, do you think we get stigmatized too much? People are quick to judge us.
Yes, yes. I think any form of disability, people judge,
Yeah.
whether we like it or not. If we see someone in a wheelchair, we will perhaps be different to them how we would be to an able-bodied person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if we see someone struggling vocally, or we see someone who's signing for someone,
Yeah.
we will be different, and about how
Very.
we are around that person, because we see someone signing for them. And I think we need to have an educated, adult, mature discussion as a society about how we integrate people with all forms of
Yeah.
disability
Yeah.
and ability into society and into employment, and to contribute. The example I use quite often is in 2007, or it may have been 2006. I think it might have been 2006. Most of us that had a phone would have had something like a Nokia 6300.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, or a
Yeah.
BlackBerry, or a
Yeah.
BlackBerry. Those would be the sort of the two main phones. And the Nokia 6300 it really did fit in the palm of your hand,
Yeah.
and it was a phone, and you could talk to someone, you could phone. And the other thing it could do, it could send little text messages.
Correct.
And if you were really lucky, it might send the odd photograph every now and then. But essentially, that was the device you had in your hand. But the devices that we had on our desks at the time were what I'm looking at now, which is a laptop or a computer. And Steve Jobs went, we've got this phone. What else can we put on this phone? What else can we create as a handheld device that can bring the power of the internet and all of the technology and all of the ability to communicate with people around the world? I want to do that. I think we can produce something better than just a phone that sends a few messages. And I would love to have been a fly on the wall at that director's meeting when he said, guys, I've got this idea. Hear me out on this, because I think this could be something big for our business. And wasn't it just,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
they're one of the first $1 trillion companies on the planet. And they had changed at a moment in time how we communicate with each other around the world. because he thought of the what if questions. He thought, what if we combine the power of the internet that we have on our desks with the power of the phone that we have in our hand? And he decided that he would investigate that, and he came up with a way of doing it, and he did it. And when we look at people like Nikola Tesla, who was probably on the spectrum as well, and people like Einstein and Newton and Beethoven and Mozart, Leonardo da Vinci, they're all suspected to have been on the spectrum. And what they have done for us as a people, as a society, they advanced mathematics and physics. They developed our new understanding of how we view the world. Beethoven and Mozart, probably two of the greatest composers that have
Mm.
ever created music. And it's because they think differently. They think they're not governed by the constraints of, oh, I'm only supposed to think about something in this tiny little way, this little box. That's that's my remit, is to think about something in this little box. They think globally. They expand their thinking way beyond the confines of everyday thinking. And because they do that, because they ask the what if questions, they can come up with something new and fantastic. It may be a more efficient product. Um, it may be a process that takes out 3 steps that you have when you're making something in manufacturing, because manufacturing is very often not just one process. It can be for ball bearings and widgets and things like that, but to make to make a motor car, it's not one process. You have all sorts of different components producing the panels, producing the doors, the windows, the glass, the electrics, the engine system, the water cooling system. It's an amalgamation of a whole component of a number of systems all together. And so if someone was looking at how to do something in your business, and you had 6 steps, and each had a machine, let's just call it, each had a process, a machine, and they looked at it and think, I think we could do that in 3 machines, 3 steps. That immediately makes you far more efficient in what you're doing. It uses less electricity and power, so it's cheaper to make, and it reduces your costs and your overheads, so you can be more profitable. You could reduce your price, sell more products. And it's this kind of free thinking and not being constrained by normal everyday thinking that people with Asperger's can bring. And I think it's the recognition of these talents is, and it's not just acceptance. Acceptance is important, but it's acceptance and understanding, and it's then going beyond that. It's into engaging and integration of people with Asperger's
Mm.
into society, into employment, where they can be put to their best use. Which there's 2 things. I've just talked about how it can be great for the business, but probably even more than that, for that person, it gives them, it makes them feel valued at work, and they will feel as though they are important and that what they are doing is contributing to the business. And there is very few greater things to think in business as a person in your job than when you feel valued, and your contribution is recognized in the company that you're working for. And you can't put a price tag on that, but you can measure it, because they're coming to work every day with a skip in with a skip in their step, with enthusiasm, with a smile, because they are doing something that they are good at, that they enjoy, and it is valued by their employer. And if we can get more people in all walks of life and all frames into employment with a smile on their face, doing good work, it has to be better than what we currently have.
Yeah.
And I know that there are initiatives, and there are companies, some of the big blue chip companies and some of the big banks and insurance companies, they are looking at being more diverse, more inclusive. And that's not just looking at Asperger's, that's looking at the whole range of inclusion and diversity and equality. And there's a company called Auticon, who have offices in Glasgow, in Scotland. They're all over the world, and they're an IT service provider. They provide companies with outsourced IT, and every single person who works in their IT department has Asperger's or autism. Every single one. They go out of their way to look for people who are great at coding at computing, computer applications, and the fine arts of what goes on in IT. They actually seek out these people who have that ability and that skill, and they only employ people on the spectrum for that task. How fantastic is that? You know,
Brilliant, isn't it?
that their ability is recognized, they're well rewarded for it, and they are giving their clients, which could be the big blue chip companies and big multinational companies, a level of service that can deal with, businesses of tens of thousands of people, all having their own internet systems and intranets and the complex things
Yeah.
that go on when people have big, massive companies have IT, which they all have because they all have a computer
Andrew,
at their
what would
desk.
you like to see? What would you like to see in the UK alone? If you had the choice to make changes, what would you do?
I would like to see every company have someone specifically with the responsibility for employing people who, particularly for me, who are on the spectrum, but we're talking overall diversity and inclusion and equality. I would like every company to have someone at board level have actual responsibility to say, we need to ensure and make sure, and we need to go out and look for the best talent that we can get for our business. And that person has the responsibility for it. They have a budget. They instruct HR as to how to go about and how to recruit, how to advertise for recruiting, and have that person be responsible for it and have them be able to have to report and be accountable for that. And that might be easier to say in a big multinational
Yeah,
company.
yeah, yeah.
But in smaller enterprises, SMEs, there still has to be a way where even if companies group together in business, maybe we have local organizations that represent people in who are diverse in the wide variety of the spectrum. And there are companies who actually have the resources to have, I don't want to use the word registers and things like that, but know who people are and what skills that they
Yeah.
can bring to business. And so when someone is looking for 5 people to work on a shop floor or a production line, these people are informed and they are told so that they know that there's 5 jobs there. We have the opportunity to get 5 candidates in for interview or to get 20 candidates in for interview. It's getting people in to have interviews, supporting them in how to write a CV, how to attend interviews, because um, people on the spectrum, we can struggle with that one-to-one face-to-face communication. And so having someone who can tutor them and train them in interview techniques is part of that process. So that if that was a local organization, maybe it might be affiliated to the CAB, or it might be, there's a way of doing it. If there's a will, there's a way. If there's a way of doing it so that people who have disabilities or different abilities um, can still get the skills that they have recognized, and they can still get the opportunity to apply for jobs and get heard and get seen and get interviewed. Because
Do you think so, at this moment in time, when people do go for jobs, especially people with disabilities, do you think they're being heard, seen, and being employed? Because I don't think so. I think they are being people who go to job interviews. What they do is, what happens is when they're disabled, they go along, and next minute they say sorry, and like a person, say like a call center, a person in a wheelchair, right?
yeah,
Now
yeah,
they can do a job, easy job, right? And all of a sudden they go along, and next minute they don't get a job, but the other person is able-bodied, and everything's okay, gets a job in front of them. But the trouble is, Andrew, what really gets up my nose is this: that many people who have disabilities don't get the opportunities they deserve. Do you agree or disagree?
I agree. I completely agree. Absolutely. We only had to look at the numbers, the statistics I gave earlier. Only 16% in full-time employment, 16% in other kind of employment, and only 48% of all disabled people have some form of employment. Now that that's a shocking That is a
Yeah, yeah,
shocking
yeah, yeah.
indictment on our current system.
But if you flip the coin, though, Andrew, if you flip the coin on the other side, there are some people who's on sick pay, who's on disabilities, and who is getting more money than they rather stay on sick pay or disability benefits, right?
Yeah,
Than go out and work because they're getting more money.
yeah. I'm not sure that there's a lot that when there is more than a very low paid job that it's a lot more. But there is a we do get into a dependency sometimes where people who are in that situation don't know how to get out of the rut that they're in, and this is where we need to have that discussion about, well, we understand that you can't work at the moment, but what can you do, and what can we train you to do,
Mm,
and and how can we improve your skill set rather than just forgetting about them.
yeah,
I think we've got to get away from forgetting about people.
yes, yes.
We absolutely have to get away about forgetting and if that means we need to have that mature adult conversation, then let's have it, and let's put
But we're
people
not,
from
we're not, we're not. What's the government said they're going to put people into jobs. They're going to stop benefits. They're going to do everything in their power. But I've seen nothing as it is. There was
no.
different mention in the budget yesterday. You know,
Yeah.
£20. I was doing something the other day with the news. £20. From one of the benefits, are taking £20 away.
Mm,
£20 to somebody is quite a lot of money.
it is. It is. Yeah,
So
it is. Absolutely, it is. And I've been in that situation where we've not been able to work, and yeah, it's it's soul destroying, and it's so depressive, and you get into a fugue. I mean, I can get bad depression, and I can be in a really bad place, and so and I know I'm not the only person who can get into that sort of situation, and it's difficult to think of a way out other than trying to have some local resource that is really working for the people to help people find out where the jobs are, help them get their CVs prepared, help them with interview techniques, and try and help them get the job. And we do have the Disability Act of 2010, I believe, which makes it a criminal offence for employers to discriminate someone because of their
the
disability.
zero, the zero, Andrew, they do.
So there shouldn't be a reason why a disabled person who can do that job doesn't get the job, but we both know that they don't, and it's incredibly difficult, and I don't know that I have an answer. I can get very frustrated about uh, how when governments talk about things, they always talk about um, hardworking families, and things like that, and that's right. The family is an important unit, but there are other people who are on their own, and they don't have the support mechanism around. And how can we help these people? And I struggle to find an answer. I really do.
Yeah, yeah. Um, last couple of questions. The trouble is, right? I'm looking on the website at the moment, and they've got the Equality Act and Disabled People Act. So, and the trouble is, you kind of people who's got disabilities, whatever job they go through, every one of them is human being at the end of the day, and
Yes,
they should be looked at no differently. Do you agree?
absolutely, completely agree. Um, how someone looks, whether it's by color, whether it's by their hair color, whether it's the color of their eyes or their skin color or their culture, or whether they're wearing a hijab or not, it's irrelevant to how they can do the job.
Yeah, yeah,
If
yeah,
someone has the ability to do the job, they should be given the opportunity to do that job.
yeah.
And if companies need to make certain accommodations for that, then they need to make those accommodations. You know, um, not. not providing the support to have someone with Asperger's syndrome or with someone with autism making adjustments as to how they receive instructions and how they're managed with their
Mm.
line managers. So not providing that support is like not providing a ramp for someone in a
Oh yeah,
wheelchair,
yeah, yeah,
you know. And there are so many people out there who are struggling, and they have skills and they have abilities, and they should be given the opportunity to do work. And we've got to get away from just being a number counting exercise. We're not numbers. We're people, as you said earlier. There, we're human beings. We have our own our own desires, our own wishes, our dreams, and we should be supported in doing that, in finding those things that work for them. Um, but it's not easy. It is not easy.
yeah, yeah. I just think the government talk about, the other day I was on Twitter, right? And I'm not going to get into politics. I haven't got time to do that right now. But I can tell you this. I can tell you this, right? That what gets my goat is this: is when they they're in Parliament, they're kind of like representing the Queen, and all of a sudden they're on their mobile phones, right? They're on their mobile phones while Parliament is in play, and they're all on their mobile phones. It could be business or it could be anything else. Then if you look around, right, you see half of them falling asleep or asleep.
Mm.
Now, every one of them gets paid to attend. 500, no, what was it? I can't remember what it was. It was £300 per person to attend. Now,
Mm.
come on.
Yeah,
Who's
yeah,
playing the game here? You know what I mean?
yeah. I would love to get paid to attend to go to work and then get paid to work as well. That would be
Yeah,
great.
yeah, I would.
Uh, you know, I I find the way that we treat our elected representatives, or the way that they have decided that they should be treated by themselves, because they vote this in themselves. I think we need to look at that again.
Yeah, yeah,
I think we do. You're being a public servant representing a constituency, or if you're in the House of Lords, but you are still representing people of the
yeah,
country.
yeah.
Then it should not be a gravy train for you to make considerable amounts of money from.
No, no.
You are doing a job. It is a very responsible job,
Of course
and I
it is.
think some people forget that they have a responsibility to not
To the
just
crown, yeah, yeah,
the 25,000 people that gave them their majority, but they have a responsibility to the 15,000 others who didn't vote for them. They
yeah,
have a responsibility to everyone, and I think we've lost that.
yeah.
I think we've lost that somewhere along the way, and um, we need to change that. I mean, I saw a great article on Angela Merkel recently, and she's in the supermarket pushing her trolley, getting her weekly groceries,
Huh.
because that's what they do. That's what she does. She doesn't have someone to go do her shopping for her. She doesn't have, all these great allowances. She just, you know, she gets paid to do her job as the chancellor of her country, and but she still goes to her do a weekly shop, you know, because she's just like the rest of us. And I think some people in our government or system have forgotten that they should just be that they are just the everyman representing the everyman, and that does
Yeah,
disappoint me, shall we say.
yeah. Andrew, thank you very much for your time. It has been brilliant. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Steve. It's great to talk about my Asperger's and my writing. I love it.
Brilliant. Thank you. I've got a book out coming out soon.
Yes, I've seen that.
Well, today it's out today, guys. So go and get it, and don't forget to get Andrew's book too. And
Thank you.
Andrew, I think my wife's going to book you in again. I think so, and we'll talk again. Thank you so
Indeed.
much. Thank you. Bye bye for now.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.
Bye bye.